Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to everybody who has joined us today. Uh, we are very much thrilled to have you all at our webinar, which is on the SailPoint Identity Now, Navigate Identity. Guys, my name is Gary, and I'm from Orbus International, who would be the hosting this exciting session and moving further. From the session standpoint, the agenda would be we would be having a very quick overview in terms of the Orbus and what all Orbus International provides as services. Then moving on with the, a small, quick interaction in terms of, introduction for the trainer side. And then finally moving on with our webinar on the SailPoint IDEA, wherein we would be covering on the details around CIEM, workflows, SailPoint Forms, SailPoint versus artificial intelligence, along with the role modeling. So let's start up. And once again, thank you very much for taking your time and joining the session with us. So guys, Orbis International has been, incepted since 2010 and has been into the training institute, or I would say training company, which has been growing exponentially into the cybersecurity and IDM domain. We have introduced our new portal as cybersectrainings.com, which is a new identity for an Orbis International. Orbis works with the mantra, which is very clear that if we want every professional with the learn, grow, and succeed model. Moving ahead, we have other avenues as well, wherein we have been diversifying the business all across the globe from a prospect of resourcing as well as consulting business, further enhancing ourselves more strongly into the training side. Basically, from a cybersecurity services standpoint, we have various services and training modules which we are providing to our customers and the enterprises, right from identity and access management tools, cybersecurity tools, cloud and security, and other security. And our performance has been gauged by that every year we have been, empaneling and, getting direct enrollment with the big corporates and the MNCs on all these trainings. Moving ahead, particularly from the identity and access management services, we have our avenues into the IDM manpower, identity governance, administration, and so on. Similarly, into the access management, as well as various tools into the privilege access management. From the IAM tools, we have various tools like IBM, Ping Identity, ForgeRock, Beyond Trust, NetIQ, One Identity. Moving on to the SailPoint, RSA, CyberArk, Okta. Considering that we have been into this training side since long, so we have got various clients into the Wipro, TOS, HCL, Capgemini, Birlasoft, Emphasis, who have been leveraging our services with the various kind of training program, right from the fundamental to the advanced level. So saying that, I would like to introduce our trainer as well, whose name is Jaideep. So Jaideep would be taking us through the further session on the SailPoint. When it comes to Jaideep, he has been, into the IDM and cybersecurity since 15 plus years. He has been into the, majorly working on the development side on the SailPoint since very long. And he has been helping us in terms of various training opportunities. So just allow us one more minute so that Jaideep can continue from here on. Thank you. Over to you, Jaideep.
Morning. I'm audible, everyone.
Yeah, you're audible.
Hello, everyone. So let me share my screen. Okay. So hello, everyone. So starting with the quick introduction, introduction about myself, right? I'm working as an architect, cybersecurity architect, and involved in full lifecycle implementations of enterprise cybersecurity projects. I've been involved in architecture design, developments, implementations, quality assurance, governance of quality assurance, and production delivery and optimization across the enterprise cybersecurity projects. And primarily, I've been working in and access management domain, but I also have experience across the other security domains, as in secure infrastructure design, secure development life cycle, and DevSecOps, which is essentially embedding security controls within the product development life cycle, and vulnerability management, endpoint protection, data security, and network security domains. Uh, in the identity and access management domain, like I have exposure across implementation of enterprise identity and access management landscapes with various vendor solutions, primarily with as like experience in implementing projects using SailPoint Identity IQ, Identity Now, and also have exposure to across the IAM vendors as ForgeRock, like in the IGA domain, having exposure to SailPoint, Savient, Oracle Identity Management says RSS, like Identity Governance and Lifecycle solution, and also in across the access management SSO domain with Okta, Azure, RSA suite of secure ID suite of products, NetIQ, access governance and tools. Further, in the like I'm a developer, and I have I'm a programmer developer and have access to develop solutions. I have developed homegrown like enterprise CIEM systems, customer
The
identity and access.
CRP and the NBDA stand in the gap to where traditional capital institutions can't meet.
So yeah, that about the in the programming, I have exposure in developing multiple solutions and projects. Like my primary programming strength is Java Spring framework, but worked across the frameworks as C Sharp, the front end technologies with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, bit of Angular, and React frameworks. So that's on the introduction about myself. However, coming to the today's topics, right? Like we will be in short, the agenda about today's session is that we will be working with starting with the cloud, how the IT infrastructure has moved out, like eventually is moving towards the cloud practices, which is the flexible allocation models, like the challenges moving on to cloud in terms of governance, security, governance and enforcing security policies, processes, and controls. How identity security cloud, SailPoint ISC's cloud CIEM solution can help you. CIEM with IGA can help you in taking the control of your cloud assets and resources, ensuring that you have optimal policies, processes, and controls across your cloud infrastructure, like across your cloud landscape ecosystem. And the further we will also discuss about the AI services, artificial intelligence services within the identity security cloud solution, enabling the better user experience in your identity governance and administration policies, processes, and controls. And further, we'll have a kind of quick dive of workflows that is another powerful component in ISC tool chain, which will help in orchestrating your business processes and use cases. Moving next, right? Like coming to like cloud, right? What like I'll try to keep my trainings interactive. If any questions, you can ping it. Like we can take it at the end of the chat. But coming to this main concept, right? Like cloud. What is the first understanding that comes to everyone's mind? I like a quick query to you guys. Like what is cloud? What do you make sense of? Like what is the cloud infrastructure, or what is the cloud environment? Anyone, please feel free to unmute and respond or interact. Hello.
Yeah, hi Jay.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, I can understand cloud means virtual space for the storage of systems and data.
Okay. Cloud means virtual space for storage. Okay. And like why virtual space? And I like at a high level, if you can let me know whatever is your understanding, right? Like we like from why we need virtual storage, why cloud, why not physical storage compute infrastructure, if you anyone can. Yeah, but great answer. Yeah, like it's a virtual, like virtual storage, virtual compute, virtual network. Anyone, any else want to respond? Okay. So I'll start with that, right? Like cloud, right? This is the term that is around, and enterprises are kind of pivoting the digital transformation initiatives around cloud, software-defined data centers, virtualizations, right? So to explain, right, what the cloud is eventually the pool of compute infrastructure resources. Like if we are trying to define what a cloud is in general sense, right? It's a pool of compute infrastructure resources, right? Like when I say a pool, like it's a huge bulk of compute power that's there. Like it's a data center, right? Cloud is essentially a data center with a huge pool of compute power, a huge pool of like, compute power is there. There is network and interconnections. That is a connectivity with the ISP and the internet, right? And there are storage disks, right? You have multiple storage solid state drives. NVM is like your redundant array of independent disks, right? So you have a bulk of compute network and storage hosted in data center. And you will be like, like data center is what we also have traditionally, right? Like in past 10, like traditionally, or in the IT environments, right? Like 30 years back or so, we used to have data centers, right? Like then why you are saying cloud is data center, right? But along with the data center, right? Like cloud, what the key point of cloud is, it's a pool of compute infrastructure resources, but there is a virtualization layer, right? Like as as one of your participants also called out, right? The important is virtualization, right? So it's virtualization that defines the cloud, or the cloud ecosystem, right? So you have a pool, like a bulk of compute resource, right? Like let's say you have multiple servers, like hundreds of server racks, each with 64 gigabits of gigabyte of RAM, 64 GB of RAM, a good clock frequency, good to aggregate clock frequency, a good amount, like each servers are interconnected with networks. They are interconnected with the ISP connectors, like gateways, and also you have a terabytes or petabytes of storage in the data center. But the main thing that delivers the cloud is virtualization, right? And the reason why the main important aspect that defines cloud is flexibility, right? So it's a flexibility delivered by virtualization, right? So you have pool of compute network and storage, which is abstracted by virtualization layer in order to deliver flexible resources to the like the important concept here is flexibility and on demand, right? So in order to deliver flexible on demand services that can size that can size up and down according to the workload requirements, right? So that's the cloud, right? The main concept here is virtualization, which delivers flexibility, which ensures that your cloud resources, right, like your the compute power, the networking, the storage required as per your cloud workload pattern can scale and can scale up or down as per the workload requirements, right? So the main technology there is virtualization, which is delivered as a on-demand resource. Right, when I say virtualization, right, why I mean that is, right, like let's say traditionally you have a 10 I am just giving a very simple example. Suppose we are a XYZ corporation, and like we have 5 applications, right? Like it's a startup, small size company. You have 5 applications, 5 digital applications. One managing, let's say, employee time. The another application is managing the employee finances. The 2 applications are customer facing, that is managing your products and services, customers facing products and services. And suppose one other is your B2B application, which is managing your partners and vendors, right? So like suppose a XYZ corporation, you have 5 applications, 5 digital applications. If you had, like let's say you need to host those 5 applications, right? So you need to have a platform which can host those applications. So traditionally, you need to have a compute power with a sufficient network connectivity, so that the application, like you need to have a compute machine. On the top of machine, you need to have a specific operating system, a specific like as you want to host this application as a web service, right? You need to have a web server. You will be having certain database to store as a storage or persistence layer, right? So if you are to host this setup, right, like in case you want to do we were doing traditionally, which is before, like without virtualization, it will go like you have a physical compute, right? Physical compute machine with a defined capacity, right? Like a physical compute, like your laptop or computer or workstation or a server, right? Will have the capacity that is bounded, right? Like bounded by the physical motherboard and the sockets and the connectivity, the ports that are there in the system, right? Like you will have a machine that is sized accordingly, right? Like let's say based on your architecture design, capacity planning, based on your workload pattern, user base, and usage patterns, you estimated that one of the application, employee time management, will require, let's say, 8 GB RAM, a particular storage, and a particular networking requirements. Like others, you sized it accordingly, right? Like one requiring 8, another requiring 4, another requiring 8 GB, and so on, right? So you have 5 machines with each with a certain capacity. And if you have to host it on a physical server, then you are bound to that the capacity limits of that physical system, right? And the problem is the workload patterns, right? That typically change based on like the workloads change based on the user load, the user load, the time of use, like when the application is used at most, and the workload patterns may vary, right? So there could be the case that your employee time management application is used more during the morning hours, like 8 a.m. to 6 p. 6.
Now you are going too much.
Sorry, hello. Hello. Yeah, if anything, do let me know. We can chat. Like I guess you are Gary, you are monitoring the chat conversations, right? Like we can take the questions later.
Yes, Jyoti. Yes.
Yeah.
We would be monitoring, and team, everybody, just for the having the a better session and utilization of the time, we would request that once Jaideep is through, we will have a dedicated separate time frame for a Q&A, and wherein he would be more than happy to provide you the answer your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So continuing to our topic, right? Where I'm going is cloud is essentially flexibility, right? And the example that we were discussing is like you have 5 applications. If each of those 5 applications were mapped to a physical compute space, and there was any change in workload pattern, right? Like our application that is like, let's say, employee time management application is utilized more on 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is another application where the usage pattern is mostly, let's say, towards like the number of users are less. So like, let's say, though you have provisioned a 8 gigabit, like 8 GB gigabyte RAM of compute power, but that usage pattern of that application is less, and it's only consuming, like, let's say, 50% of your CPU power. And a particular percentage of your RAM, right? Like, let's if a particular application is workload pattern is keeping the compute underutilized, or some application would be like where it's keeping the compute pattern overutilized, right? In such cases, if you are just deploying applications on per like physical host, you would not have the flexibility, right? Like in case, like, let's say, even if a particular computer is overloaded and certain systems are underutilized, right? Then as well, like if it was directly mapped one-on-one to physical systems, you don't have flexibility, right? So for that, right, we worked out in the era of cloud where we use virtualization, right? So rather than having the discrete units of physical computes, right, rather than having this, each machines with 8 GB RAM, 4 GB RAM, like 5 different machines, each with a particular specs, right? Each of them having this being a discrete machines, what we do is we use the virtualization layer, right? So rather than having discrete machines, what we do is we have a pooled resource, right? Like we pool, like rather than having 5 servers, each with a particular capacity, we have 1 or 2 server, right? Like in order to ensure high availability, like typically, let's say, redundancy, we have multiple systems, but it would be a pooled compute resource. Where I'm going is rather than having smaller compute unit or smaller physical servers, you have a big resource, right? With let's say 64 GB of RAM and certain specs, right? A certain clock power, a certain compute cycle, a particular multi-core processor, right? So what you do is you pool your compute resources into a pool, and then in order to, like, let's say now still you need to deploy your 5 applications. You could directly deploy your 5 applications on the same server, right, as a different processes, but also what you need to, along with that, you have what we want is the security, right? We need to ensure that the security context, administration, and there is an isolation, right? You don't want each of these 5 applications to be hosted on same system and sharing the same process space, where one of the application might overrun, right? If it is overutilized, it might overrun and take all the physical nodes compute capacity, and other applications are suffering, outages, right? So along with pooling it, what you want is you want to have security controls, you want to have isolation. Yeah, you need to have that, you have each of these 5 applications will have their isolated space with a defined capacity as required by the application. So each of these apps have a bounds, right? Upper bounds, isolation. You need to ensure that, each of the process context, management and administration context, as well as security context of those 5 applications are different. So, right, what virtualization enables is virtualization creates isolated logical channels, in your physical compute system, so as you can host multiple application softwares or services on a same physical compute machine, but still ensure that you have isolation, you have bounds, you have security controls, and so on, right? And the benefit we get with having now, rather than deploying each of these 5 applications in individual context into this pooled machine with a virtualization, right? There are multiple virtualization tools available, right? Like you have VMware Workstation. Everyone would be aware, like VMware ESX, like Enterprise Elastic Sky. Elastic X product is for enterprise grade hypervisor virtualization software. There is other providers like KVM, which is an open source Linux based virtualization tool suite. There is Microsoft's hypervisor Hyper-V product, which allows you to which is a virtualization software that you can run to manage your fleet of servers, your pooled compute network and storage resources, right? So where it's going is, like, as now you have a big pooled resource with a virtualization where you can deploy each of your 5 applications, still ensure that each of these 5 applications has their dedicated capacity. Each of them have their isolated security context and isolated administration and functional spaces, right? Still you have flexibility, right? Like now if you discover that one of the application is overutilized while another application is underutilized, you can flexibly, with from the virtualization software, you can tweak the configurations, right? You can say like if your let's say application is peak loaded in the morning hours, you can adjust like you can set your rules that during the morning hours you can add additional capacity or scale up, right? So adding additional capacity is essentially scaling up or scaling out, right? You can create a different virtual machine, like a cluster node for your employee time management software during the peak load. And if there is no load or underutilization, right, you can again here from the virtualization software, you can scale down your resources so as to meet your workload patterns and also ensure that you have optimal utilization. Right now, you are not bound to the capacity of physical systems that is in there, right? Like otherwise, if it would be a single physical system, changing, changing a RAM of a machine, like you need to check the motherboard, you need to add additional RAM, or you need to remove the additional RAM. And again, that depends upon the maximum capacity of your motherboard or the physical compute space that you have, right? So where this is going is like traditionally we used to have discrete computes. Then what we did is we pooled all the resources together into a big machine, big resource, and we use software, virtualization software, to flexibly manage the allocations, the secure, where virtualization is isolated, isolated grouping of compute resources that can be, wherein your application can be hosted, and then therein you have flexibility, security controls, isolation, and all the flexibility benefits, right? So when I say cloud, right, it's typically what you like. It's not just the public cloud service providers, right? Like you have Microsoft Azure cloud platform, right? We have Google cloud platform. We have Amazon Web Services, AWS. These are all trending cloud providers, right? They are providing, like what they are doing is they are having big data centers at multiple regional locations, multiple geographic locations, and they are delivering, like they eventually are doing the technology behind is they have big data center pool of resources. They have virtualization layer to ensure that you have isolation. You need to ensure, right? Like let's say in the, like let's say customer, like there are 5 customers for Microsoft Azure platform, right? Each of the 5 customers resources will be hosted. One second. Yeah, each of these 5 resources will be hosted in the same block of physical compute, but yet each of the customers will have assurance that their security context, their the service level, like objectives, right? The physical bounds, and the each of the application have a dedicated virtual space in that big server, and yet ensure that there is isolation, there is a flexibility, and they are delivering that. So big cloud providers like Microsoft, AWS, Google Cloud Platform, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, right? They are delivering this compute resources as flexibly on demand, right? Like we pay as you go. The key trending model in the cloud provider is they are delivering that as a services to the customers, to any customers who want to subscribe for the cloud services. And the beauty of this product is that there is no fixed commitments, right? They are not reserving a physical compute block for each and every customer, right? So there is no physical. They are efficiently managing the customer workloads and ensuring the optimal utilization of their or underlying compute infrastructure, and offering these services on flexible, right? The flexibility is main, flexible pay as you go model, right? So those are public cloud, right? But I can say that you, like let's say your organization, my XYZ corporation, can still own a cloud. Like I can still say that I am a cloud or agile, right? Without subscribing to any of the public cloud services. I could have my own data center, right? My own data center at XYZ Corp located in, let's say, Mumbai region. Like I own a physical facility. I'll have a pooled compute resource stack there, where like it's my own, my XYZ Corp's personal or private cloud ecosystem, right? The cloud is basically you own a physical, like you have a pool of resources, but the the main concept of cloud there is virtualization, right? If I'm managing each of my fleet of physical systems that I have by the virtualization tools, like I could use enterprise grade tools like VMware solutions or Microsoft Hyper-V solutions or open source tools like KVM solutions. If I'm managing it with a virtualization solution, I have the flexibility. That's my private cloud, right? Like that's the cloud just for XYZ corporation for hosting my private applications and resources. Still, I can say this is a cloud because I'm flexible, like I'm managing that physical fleet flexibly by the use of virtualization. So that's my private cloud environment, right? So just to clarify, like cloud is anything that is pooled and what you have virtualization, you are flexibly managing, optimally managing the infrastructure, the underlying assets. That's cloud. You can have public cloud, which is the vendors like Microsoft, Google, Azure, AWS. They are providing that as a services to customers. So that's public cloud, works on pay-as-you-go, flexible resource or fixed commitment models. Then you have private cloud, which is the cloud hosted and like typically private to a particular company or a particular organization. But the key thing there is it is managed by a virtualization software. Right, like with that introduction of cloud, like with cloud you have flexibility, right? You can like it could be in like the cloud could be delivering infrastructure services, like which is virtual machines, virtual networks, virtual storage allocations, like you reaching out to Microsoft saying like, hey, I need to host an application. Sorry. Yeah. Hey, sorry. Okay, yeah. So where we are going is cloud is essentially your uh, virtualization flexibility, right? Like it could be infrastructure resources that I'm reaching out to Microsoft. Like if I don't have a resources, enough resources to build out my physical data center with virtualization tools and things, right? I'll rather get the services from the public cloud providers. I say like, hey, Microsoft, I need to host my application. I need, let's say, NGB of RAM, NGB of compute, like like let's say 4 cores of processor, 8 GB of RAM, a storage capacity of 50 GB, right? Please share me a virtual space. They will allocate a virtual machine. Then I can deploy my application services there. If I detect that my workload as per my workload pattern, I'm seeing that I need more compute power. I can share, I can configure auto scaling group where I can say that if the CPU utilization is more than 90%, ensure that span another VM in the cluster. So now, I can be flexible and like I can set up rules like if computer utilization is, let's say, less than 30%, scale down to 0 or scale down to 1 machine in order to serve the workload, right? So it could be infrastructure, it could be platform, right? Like my cloud service provider can say like, okay, hey, if I go with infrastructure, right? Infrastructure as a service, I need to manage the operating system, the middleware platforms or the server solutions that I need, or the databases configurations that I need for my applications. It can provide more abstract service offerings, like you can just provide me I can say that hey Microsoft, I don't know how to set up and manage Apache Tomcat or WebLogic or middleware platform or databases. So can you help? Like I have a code, I have my application logic. Can you provide me a space wherein I can deploy my application and don't need to worry about managing the operating system, the middleware platforms, the server configurations, the databases? Then those typical service offerings are platform as a service, where they are providing you application deployment platform. You can just plug in your code, your source control system like GitHub, wherever you are maintaining your application software solution. It will automatically deploy that into the underlying application server and takes care of all the underlying management aspects further. So that's platform as a service offerings. Like it also offers you databases like MySQL, Oracle services, etc. So that's your PaaS, platform as a service. And some directly offers you a software solution, right, which is your software as a service. And every one of us has used some or other software as a service solutions, like your Google Gmail solution, right? It is software as a service. They are delivering the fully functional software or a solution as a service to the customers, right? Your Google Drive, Gmails, your Outlook, Outlook or Office 365 mail solutions, SharePoint Online, Exchange Online, right? All of those are your software as a Workday, which is a beautiful HCM software, human capital management SaaS solution. ServiceNow, which again is the application platform management service, right? So essentially, cloud is virtualization with which can also additionally package additional services or layers to the customers that can be utilized flexible on demand by the underlying technology. There is virtualization. Okay. So moving next, right? Like as we move ahead, right, where what is cloud? Traditional, the traditional IT infrastructure, like IT environments, were all with private data centers, like physical systems, managed corporate networks. Like you have a well-defined set of firewalls, DMZ zones, everything within your controls. And your traditional IAM systems also deployed on managed by the customers in your own data centers or services, right? In, but it involves specialized skill sets and maintaining the data. You need to have access to your physical. Then you need to ensure that you manage, you have a resources who can manage your compute servers. You need to have upfront commitment, right? Like your capability expense, like is building the data center, acquiring the pooled compute resources, acquiring the software licenses, right? Like that upfront is more in case you are building your own private cloud ecosystem, right? So typically organizations, like if they just don't want to focus on building data center and maintenance of resources, private cloud, they typically subscribe to public cloud services, right? And enterprise, the typical IT trend currently in the typical digital transformation programs is like enterprise are adopting public cloud services and platforms, right? But as the shift is there, right, in doing this public cloud or in some sort of services, right, either you have you maintain your own services using IA infrastructure as a service or directly utilize platform as a service solutions or SaaS offerings. The underlying it delivers benefits of that. We don't need to do upfront capability expenses, right? You don't need to upfront build the physical servers or systems, and you don't need to worry about maintenance and management of these systems, right? You can just offload it to your cloud provider like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. But as we do this, right, like we have the flexibility, we can move the workloads, we can deliver agility in our enterprise enterprise IT management. But there is one more important security trend, like we need to ensure, right, as we move the resources onto cloud, we need to ensure that we appropriately maintain the security controls. Like there is inherent risk, right? Like as you if everything was under your control, under your corporate data center, which is managed by your firewalls, managed by your set of routing rules, policies, security defenses, right? It was all under your control. Now, as we move towards more flexibility, you try to give the services on demand, right? Even within the enterprise application, like corporate application teams, right? You drive the culture of application teams can self-service request for cloud resources, right? Like let's say in order to ensure agility, decentralized governance, and empowering every IT applications within your applications. Like let's say HR team needs to build an application, you deliver them a self-service interface which they can request for cloud resource, which they can request for resources, right? So compute, network and storage resources. And then your cloud provider will automatically provision the virtual resources for them. And as you have this decentralized self-service or flexible solutions, agility in our environments, right? We also need to validate that we have a control, we have visibility, we have governance to ensure that one thing is only right people can access right resources at the right time. The second important aspect is to ensure that malicious actor threats cannot compromise your system's confidential integrity and availability, and compromise your integrity, like eventually the cloud environment. And other important aspect is you don't see cost overruns, right? Because each of these like let's say typically public cloud providers go on flexible pay-as-you-go model, and if you are delivering these resources as self-service to application teams, there can be easily cost overruns, right? Because application, like let's say, has over provisioned a resource, or the application is decommissioned, but the cloud resources are still not provisioned, and you are seeing that overutilization in your billing, right? So in order, like as you go to cloud, you have agility, you have flexibility, you have self-service, but along with that, we also need to ensure that we implement security controls, security processes, policies in place to ensure that each of your cloud resources are rightly utilized. You don't go into the concept, like you don't have a security compromise, and also you don't go into the cost overruns, right? Where there are n number of systems within your cloud environment, n number of resources within your cloud environment which are unutilized, right? So to solve all that problems, SailPoint's Identity Security Cloud platform has this very beautiful functionality and offering, which is Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, called CIEM, right? Which gives you that visibility, that gives you back that control to ensure that you have the complete visibility governance on what resources are there across your public cloud footprint. Like it has a tighter integration with all the key public cloud providers like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud Platform. So with Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, right, you can have a single system wherein you can have, like, mostly enterprises are also currently adopting multi-cloud strategies, right, where they are having like in order to optimally avoid the single vendor dependency, and again to kind of effectively, like some services might be more cost effective in, let's say, Azure than AWS. Some others might be most effective in AWS than Azure than GCP, right? So in order to find balance your cost, and also to ensure that you have multiple, you don't have a single vendor dependencies, mostly enterprises are now also adopting multi-cloud strategies, right? Where they have, let's say, the directory is managed in Azure, like via Entra ID, and your access management is in Azure. Let's say they are also using AWS for managing the application infrastructure or application databases, right? So typically enterprises are also going on to multi-cloud strategies. But with SIM, right, with your SailPoint IAC, Identity Security Cloud's Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, you can have complete security controls. You can, with the single SIM solution, you can monitor and manage, what all resources are there across your public cloud footprint, and also ensure that only right people have access to right resources, and ensure that all your cloud policies are rightly aligned to ensure that all your resources are rightly, you have proper policies, processes, and controls in place, right? So moving ahead, what is SIM, right? You could have like there is the infrastructure as a service, like from any your infrastructure can be hosted in the flexible IaaS service offerings from any of the cloud platform providers, right? What SIM enables is a direct connectivity using APIs, right? Each of the public cloud providers like Microsoft, Azure, GCP, they expose a set of APIs, right? Web services using which you can query the details about all the resources, right? All the subscriptions, resources, resource groups, and policies around who has access to what, how, and when in your infrastructure solution, right? So with those APIs, with SIM, you can integrate all the visibility. You can set up periodic reconciliation, which will query your IaaS solutions to get the information about all the resources that are there in your tenant subscription, and also scan all your identity like IAS, IAM policies around who has access to what roles or resources within your cloud provider. And SIM enables a kind of a central governance platform wherein you can have visibility about what all resources that are there across your single cloud or multi-cloud partners, vendor partners, and also allows you to enforce controls, yeah, right, appropriate controls to ensure that you have a right set of policies in your cloud platforms to ensure that only right people have right accesses, and also have processes in place to ensure that if like you can self-service raise access request to resources in your cloud provider platform, and you have a proper governance approvals and also periodic access reviews and recertifications that you can do around. Like, let's say if Jaideep has access to a machine in sales domain, right, there will be periodic access reviews to ensure regularly attached that its access is really so the overall landscape is you have your resources in your IaaS, infrastructure as a service or platform as a service cloud provider. We have your cloud infrastructure entitlement management solution from SailPoint Identity Security Cloud. And you have a tighter visibility and regulation around controls, policies, and processes in your identity security channel so that holistically you can control who has access to what, how, and when. Now I'm quickly walking through the benefits of a typical cloud infrastructure entitlement management solution, right? With this, right, you can connect each of your public cloud providers, the tenant subscriptions that you have with the public cloud providers. But the beauty of this is it will scan all the resources, IAM policies in your cloud provider, and it will assist you with, Identity Security Cloud is also having a rich pool of resources around, best practices, policies, processes, the key inputs from, all the industry standard compliance regulations like PCI, Sarbanes-Oxley, HIPAA, right? So it also is having a knowledge base of security best practices, compliance controls that must that is the ideal state to control optimally control who has access to what, how, and when, and also the cloud resources. So with that knowledge base and input feeds from each of these, governance compliance regulations, you can have the benefits like automated settings, right? Your CIEM SailPoint ISC Infrastructure Entitlement Management solution can say that, hey, there is a policy, there is a resource group in your AWS cloud, which is not having any IAM policy, which means that anyone with the access to your tenant can access that resource. We find that this policy is too open and might lead up to compromise, right? By unwanted actors trying or malicious actors want knowingly or a genuine person unknowingly, disrupting the services. So we find that this IAM policy is too generic. Please ensure that you control it to right set of roles and people, right? So you will get those recommendations, right? In your SIEM solution with it having the knowledge base of all the best practices, compliance inputs, right? And with that, you can automatically push those settings, right? So you can have the benefits of automated security control settings. The other important aspects is removes unneeded accesses, right? You can, as you have a complete visibility, right? You can have you will be having your business policies defining who has access to how, when, and when. So you can automatically remove unneeded accesses, right? Like, let's say Jaideep having access to Salesforce server in AWS cloud. Now Jaideep is moving to suppose earlier I used to manage Salesforce operations. So I had access to SailPoint production systems in AWS cloud, but now I'm managing production, now I'm managing product developments, right? Sales product developments. So I should not have the access to that sales operations production server, right? So then, that access is unneeded as I'm switching my responsibility from to a different role where this access is no longer required, right? So then your SIEM integration can also remove that unneeded access, right? That could be a micro certification triggered, or you could have automated rules that says that if you are moving responsibilities, remove all accesses that are as per the policies of older job code and provision the new accesses required by the user, right? So you can remove unneeded accesses to ensuring that only right people have access to right resources. You can automatically provision the accesses that are relevant and required with the channel, right? So you can set your rules like if the job code is sales developer, sales product owner, then automatically allocate the access to the SailPoint development resource group in AWS or Azure cloud provider, right? So you can also set your automated provisioning, automated removals. The main thing is you have central visibility, like though you could have your resources in Azure cloud platform, some resources in your Azure, you could be a multi-cloud environment, right? In which case you have some resources in Azure, some in AWS, but here you can have a central visibility. You can connect your AWS to your SIEM solution. You can connect Azure to the CIEM solution and have a central point of visibility around what all resources that you have in your environment. Then final important aspect is you have a single audit trail, right? Like all the provisioning, deprovisioning, all the changes, policy changes that you push it from SIM, like centralized cloud infrastructure and entitlement management solution are all audited, are all logged in the immutable audit trail, which can be used as a reference or evidence for your internal and external auditors. So yeah, you have central visibility, central governance, central controls by integrating your cloud providers with your same solution. Next. Okay. So how SIEM works right now, like at a high level, we'll deep dive like how SIEM can integrate. I gave the gist. It is, it integrates with other public cloud providers using web services, but at a high level, this is the architecture, high level architecture. So you have cloud-based entitlements, right? So these are cloud, like represented as cloud, but actually they are pooled resource, right? Pooled compute network storage resources that is managed by a virtualization software delivered as a service. Like if it is Microsoft, AWS, Azure cloud platform, right? They are delivered as a service, right? That cloud, like at a high level, if we consider the concept of cloud, right? A typical public cloud in particular, you have the concept of tenant, right? Like you are not owning that physical, you are not doing an upfront investment in owning that physical data center, the virtualization tools, the orchestration systems, right? You are not owning this physical infrastructure, but as it is virtualization and they are delivering it as a service, you are essentially tenants to them, right? Like you are renting their services in order to run, flexibly renting their services in order to run your IT applications and digital applications and services, right? So we have like based on pay as you go model or flexible commitments, right? We are hosting, like we are getting a space inside the cloud platform of, let's say, Microsoft Azure or Google or AWS or Oracle, right? So there is a concept of tenant, right? Everyone is a tenant inside this big pool of resource. And how tenants are isolated, again, as I explained, right? Like there could be one physical pool, like one rack of compute servers, right? Like let's say 100 of cores of compute, a single rack is there with a 100 core of compute, let's say or 1 TB of RAM, like aggregate 1 TB of RAM connected with the networking interconnections and managed by a virtualization software, right? And that rack can host 10 tenants, right? That would be well that if the 10 tenants are small, that single rack can host 10 to 15 tenants, right? But each of those tenants are still isolated, right? How they are isolated is via the use of virtualization, right? Your virtualization tool ensures that each of your tenant has that dedicated capacity, it's an isolated environment, right? Any tenant there is no way wherein there could be cross tenant access without the configuration of appropriate policies. So you have that isolation, security controls, and context, and still you have flexibility, right? Like Each of your tenant, like we can configure auto scaling rules that can scale up or down the infrastructure based on the workload requirements, right? So typically you have a cloud, you have a subscription, like you have a tenant like different cloud providers provide different ways to managing your cost, like in order to organize your resources and costing, like organize your resources, costing, billing, right? So like let's say inside this cloud you can have like your strategy is, let's say, a public cloud only strategy. Each of your IT applications are hosted in let's say Microsoft, AWS, or Azure cloud platforms. Right now, you are delivering them the flexibility, right? Like flexibility, self-service capability, where IT is holding a certain like sales is managing certain digital applications, is having a certain infrastructure footprint, like utilizing, let's say, 5 node cluster with hosting the Salesforce application, one database platform as a service, in a virtual network. And then there is a uh, finance team that is managing similar finance applications. There is a HR team that is managing HR apps and so on. There is a customer platform apps team that is managing customer platform applications, etc. Right. So if we dump each of these resources in a single cloud platform, right, we also need to ensure that we have a governance around, like who is utilizing what resources, so that we can appropriately charge back and manage the finances. Also, we need to have security controls, appropriate controls, to ensure that only the IT administrators or sales security team can access the sales resources, and similar finance one can access the finance, IT, like HR can access HR, and so on, right? So how you organize things, right? In order to better organize things, you typically cloud providers will have the concept of subscriptions, right? Like Microsoft has the concept of subscription. So you will have one tenant, but in order to then manage, organize resources in terms of like, that grouping could be based on department or functional areas, or the teams that are managing a particular resources, right? So you can have multiple subscriptions, right? So Microsoft tenant typically tracks subscriptions. Like you could have a sales subscription, so that in your access controls, you can also have access controls, right? You can have rules like people belonging to sales department can have read contributor access to the sales subscription, and so on, right? So in order to ensure efficient security controls, also the finances part, billing, costing, typically cloud provider allows you to organize resources in either subscriptions. Microsoft, AWS call it subscriptions. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure call it compartments, right? So eventually subscription or a compartment is essentially organization of enterprise resources based on domain functional areas or teams, specialized team areas, so that you can effectively manage your security controls, effectively manage your costing, right? So you, at a high level, you have tenant, then compartment or subscription, and within the subscription as well, you can you can also have dedicated spaces or workspaces called resource groups, right? Like in Azure, you call it resource group. Azure, AWS, you have the concept of resource groups, right? Which is essentially still more segregation, right? Like still more organization, where within sales there could be 10 applications, right? So you could have a resource group dedicated to that application. And then within resource group, you will have resources. When we say resources in cloud, it is essentially either your IaaS, infrastructure as a service resources, like your virtual machines, virtual networks, virtual storage, or it could be your uh, platform as a service resources, like your MySQL database, like managed offerings, like managed platform offerings, like your database as a service, MySQL, or Redis, Microsoft SQL Server, and so on, right? Or it could be a software solutions like Looker, a specialized software offerings, right? So high level, the organization is your cloud. You have tenant. You inside tenant, you have compartments, subscriptions. Within subscriptions, compartments, you have resource groups, and within resource groups, you have resources, which are either your VMs, storage, networks, platforms, databases, and so on, containers, Kubernetes engines, and so on, right? So All of this is managed within cloud. Each of these cloud providers provides you the access to web services, right? HTTP based web services within which you can query and you can manage those information, right? You can say query a Microsoft Azure Graph API endpoint to say provide me the list of all the resource groups that are there in subscription XYZ, like in all the subscriptions within your tenant. You can query like, now provide me the access to all the resources that are there in the tenant. Provide me the details of your IAM policies around who has access to what and when in your subscriptions and resources, right? So the same solution is integrated via web services. So these dotted lines you see, they are all secure web channels, web service channels, all of the communication, right? All of your communication between your infrastructure entitlement management and your cloud provider is encrypted, right? So all of the communications are our secure channels, HTTPS, TLS 1.2, like most of the cloud providers provide TLS 1.2 based SSL channel. So all of the encryption is encrypted by TLS 1.2. You are using for Microsoft, you are using Graph API endpoints. For AWS, AWS provides its own API endpoints for managing your cloud resources. Similarly with OCI and Google Cloud Platform. So it uses those APIs to interact with your cloud provider, and that's how essentially SIM knows about the things. And also like let's say as per your IAM policies, SIM can also provision accesses or deprovision accesses based using the same similar API management endpoints. Okay. Moving ahead, calling out like what is the overall strategy of implementing a cloud infrastructure entitlement management in your organization, right? So the important is like the important key aspects roadmap is like you connect first, right? So connecting the SailPoint to the platform, which is a one-time activity where I'll be configuring within the SailPoint ISC. I will be configuring the details of my cloud tenant, like tenant ID. I'll be I need to ensure that in the cloud provider I create the service principal or a secure service account for SailPoint ISC with relevant permissions to read and write the data read about the infrastructure resources data and write information on the IAM policies and user and access management. So I need to set up I need to set up that service account in my Microsoft or Google or Oracle cloud tenant with IAM policy that provides the access to read resources information and manage the users and access information. And then what I'll be doing is I'll configuring that service account with the tenant IDs in the same solution so that then it can use that information to connect, authenticate, authorize, and manage that information. Right. So connectivity is the first part where we connect to the platform. The steps includes configuration of service account in the cloud provider and ensuring that the service account has appropriate authorizations, feeding in that details into your ISC SIM cloud portal with the tenant ID, the credentials, so that uh, the the SIM solution can connect, CIEM can connect with your cloud provider. Next step is collect. So collect would be more of a frequent job, like it would be a scheduled event, right? Daily you can run twice or thrice, scanning all your scanning all your cloud providers to get the information about resources, to get the information about IAM policies, processes, and controls that are there in place in your cloud platform, right? So that's connect, which is your scheduled jobs. You can configure the schedule of jobs, which will be basically using the get endpoints or query endpoints of your respective cloud provider to gather the detail about your tenants, compartments of subscriptions, resource groups, resources, and also the details about your IAM policies to ensure that entitlement management knows who has access to what, how, and when. The next important aspect is report, which is it provides you a very beautiful dashboard about, as I told you, the infrastructure entitlement management solution also has a beautiful compilation of knowledge base around security best practices, the standard, security best practices around the governance of your cloud infrastructures, tenant subscriptions, resource groups, and resources. And also it takes the inputs from compliance policies and regulations, and this database is up to date, like is always up to date and reflected based on the new industry best practices or threats, with information about the common vulnerabilities and the security controls that must be put in place to avoid those common vulnerabilities, right? So with that knowledge base as an input and environment data that you gather during the collect step, right? With both of this, combining this with artificial intelligence and analyzing this data set to ensure if your IAM policies, your security controls aligns with the best practices or the ideal state security controls and compliance requirements. With combining both this, it will provide you an intuitive dashboard with the details on security threats that might be there. Like you might be having two open IAM policy that allows anyone to access to a server system or a subscription, right? Or similarly, you could have a system which has a control, but too many people are having access to those resources. Or suppose you are having improper audit policy in your tenant and so on, right? So this will deliver a comprehensive report that can be used as a input for further than remediating the appropriate controls. And the final aspect is remediate, as we discussed, with it also has a tighter integration with Identity Security Cloud, which is your IGA solution. So IGA solution has the inputs about your up-to-date information about the user life cycle, right? It connects with your HR management systems for periodically as the source of truth to periodically drive the user lifecycle from it, and also as the business policy inputs around who has access to what, how, and when. And also you will be having the concept of periodic access reviews, right? Like quarterly or half yearly or yearly annual access reviews, wherein there will be a physical review by the asset owners, by your line managers, by your entitlement owners about who has access to what, how, and when. And if there are any unwanted excesses, those will be deprovisioned if not required, right? So at every point in time, you will enforce principle of least privilege. So provision or deprovision through the Identity Security Cloud or cloud platform. So that's and this is a continuous process, right? Collect, report, remediate is a continuous process. Collection will be automatically scheduled. Reporting is you can view, analyze, extract the intelligence or actions from it, and then perform remediations accordingly. So this is a periodic exercise that you need to follow. Moving next, I'll have a quick walkthrough of a demonstration of how, at a high level, steps on how you can integrate SIEM with one of Azure your Azure cloud. Right, there's a very high level steps focusing on the concept that we discussed so far, where first step, like it is generic as well, like the same step apply for AWS or GCP as well. What you need to do is you need to ensure that you set up relevant service accounts in your cloud provider, like set up infrastructure as a service cloud. Okay. The first step is setting up the required service account, set up authorizations in your cloud provider. And the next step is, providing that information, creating a source in Identity Security Cloud and the same solution, providing the detail of tenant IDs and the credentials that will help the solution to connect to your managed vendor. Okay. So at a high level, the step would be like, let's say if it is ISC, Identity Security Cloud, you will create all the external connections or the managed systems are represent, like connectivity is managed by connections and sources, where your source configuration is essentially, sources define the configurations, like the endpoints, the URLs that is required to enable that, like where to communicate, right? Where is the managed endpoint residing? The URLs, the service URLs basically represents where in the network the service is located, hosted. The next important aspect is your identifiers, the service account details, and around what you need to reconcile and at what frequency, the attributes that you want to reconcile from the systems, and those details, right? And how you want to provision. So This all is managed in source configuration in your identity security cloud. So this is at a high level for initiated, like this is the admin console of your identity security cloud tenant. At a high level, you see an interactive dashboard here where you can find the information about your sources, accounts, identities, job statuses. You have a tab around identities where you can manage your identity profiles. Over here I can create identity profiles. I can manage the identity profiles. I can manage the mappings, attributes of those identity profiles, and all the rules around identity lifecycle statuses. The next is access profiles. Over here, I can manage the application access profiles, where access profiles is basically your application roles, collection of entitlements within the application that are typically managed together as a unit required for a particular job responsibility. So you can manage your access profiles, approval configurations, and accesses. You have applications, which is the container view for your applications, the entitlements within those applications, the accounts within those applications, whether it is requestable or not in the access profiles within that. The connections is where you can perform the initial onboarding, which is you configure this. The very initial step is configuration of VA virtual appliance to connect to your network, and then source configurations based on the application details. Certifications tabs is where you configure your user access reviews. Similarly, password management allows you to configure your password policies. Global allows you to manage your global system settings like your SSO configurations, theming, etc. This is more details you can get if you enroll with us in the further sessions. But at point important, and I'm just giving a brief overview, it's connection sources where we will configure our sources. Then what we need to do is it's a very beautiful wizard-based interface where you select the source type, like what is the type of source with which you want to enable the connection. So the source type is Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management for Azure. The same steps apply for AWS, Google Cloud Platform. It's just you need to select the respective vendor, right? CIEM GCP or CIEM AWS, and you will find that that connector that is pre-templated for you. So the next is you configure it. When you configure it, you will get the interface around what is the source name. Like you can give your source name as per your, like your enterprise can be managing multiple tenants or subscriptions. So you can ensure that you provide an identifier that helps you identify your particular vendor provider. Provide the description, who is the source owner, who is owning and managing the source configuration, and the governance group that you can set up, governance group who can additionally review and manage the source configuration. The next action, as we discussed, like even before this source configuration, as I told you, the first step is in your cloud provider, in your Azure. I need to create a service principal or application registration for SailPoint IdentityNow, identity security cloud. So I'll create a registration or a service principal in the registration blade of my Azure cloud portal, Azure admin portal. And then I'll ensure that that service account has the relevant permission. So I'll assign the account the relevant role of relevant role to read information about the read write information about the directory and read information about the cloud resources across the subscription and the tenant. Right. So that's the very first step. This is the second step, where now have the service principal, which is right your application ID. So whatever the service principal you configure in your cloud provider, you need to provide that in here. So this is your cloud enterprise ID as you registered in your vendor portal, like your Azure Blade. Then you need to provide your directory or tenant ID. So this is something you can get in your Azure portal or while getting your tenant information. If you go to your profile and tenant information, there you can find your tenant ID. That identifies you as a tenant in your Microsoft Azure cloud space. The client secret that you will again get it during the registration application registration exercise in your Azure portal, right? And additionally, you can have application instance ID if you have federation setup, but that's more of an optional thing. Right. So once you do that, right, pretty much you are done with the connectivity information. The next part is just you can review and test the connection map relevant attributes. The next important details are like reviewing the connection, reviewing the attribute mappings, configuring your provisioning policies, configuring your scheduled jobs, aggregation rules, aggregation schedules, how frequent you are reconciling the entitlement details, account details, the crowd infra, the same subscription details. So that's what you will configure your aggregation jobs. You will configure your provisioning policies. So these are the details that we will discuss when we are actually when you enroll with us for trainings. The next important aspect that I want to cover is like, let's say once you have all this information onboarded, the benefits are is you have a central visibility, you have a central control, you can efficiently manage your provisioning, right? Provisioning of identities to the right access. Yeah. Sorry, yeah. So as we discussed, right, you can manage as per your business policies or self-service access request. You can manage the access, user access to resources, right? Like let's say someone needs access to a VM in the finance resource group, they can request for it. You can configure appropriate approval workflows. Once it is appropriately reviewed and if it is authoritative, the request is relevant. The approver will approve the request. The SailPoint IdentityNow will automatically provision the request based on the configured provisioning policy, and the user will get the access to the right resource, right? So that's approval, self-service access request approvals that you can configure, or you can configure your automation, right? You can configure your attribute-based access control, ABAC, or role-based access control, RBAC, to you can define your policies, security policies around like if a user is belonging having a job code of sales, product owner, developer, then I'll assign him the access to the sales subscription, sales product development resource group, right? So you can have your rules with which it can automatically govern things. You can have your deprovisioning rules, like if the department is updated, ensure that all the older accesses are deprovisioned and a user has the right accesses as per the new department. You can have your leaver policies. If a user is terminated, ensure all the accesses across all the cloud platforms are deprovisioned. And along with that, you can also drive your periodic access reviews, which is periodic compliance control, wherein you are letting your line managers or entitlement owners to certify it if the accesses are relevant or not, right? So this is like a demonstration, a quick overview of how you can manage certifications in identity security cloud, right? Wherein you can configure you can configure the camping. While camping configuration, you can use the search module or the certification modules in the tenant. You can scope it. Like during the camping configuration is a very easy process where you just define the scope, like what is the scope of certification, what all applications are covered under a certification camping, right? You can have your Azure CIEM, Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, as one of the source of certification camping, right? And then you can also tune it out, right? Like specifically granularly tune it out. Like if you want to only have a certification camping for the access to Azure groups, you can do so, right, by selecting the right set of entitlements that you want under your access review. And once you configure the scope, the next option is you configure who is reviewing the certification, like who is reviewing these accesses. The reviewers can be line managers. That the camping is line manager review, where user line manager gets the report of the accesses of their direct reportees for the scoped applications. And then based on the decisions, IdentityNow automatically performs that closed loop remediation or deprovisioning actions. Similarly, the reviewer could be entitlement owner, where the entitlement owner is a person overseeing the responsible and accountable for the policies of for access controls of that entitlement. So in that case, the reviewer will be entitlement owner. Or you could have it as a governance group where governance
is soft, delicate, and tender, vulnerable, needing
Hello,
protection, needing tender care. So
yeah. So, or you can have the certification camping on a governance group, where governance group is a group of people managing the certification. So after you configure the certification camping, right? So this is a typical view for the reviewers, where they can see that like line managers or entitlement managers can see that action, pending action as a certification camping. Like this, they can go and perform the review. Therein they will find a beautiful workspace with a list of who has access to what, how, and when. So there we'll see the people having the access to various entitlements, the entitlement name, description, the account name, the source details, right? And they can quickly either approve the certification or deny a particular action. They can also perform bulk actions, but important is to have the bulk action reviewed by your security audit team if you want to enable or disable that bulk action based on your compliance or policies that your business comes under, right? So this is a typical certified workspace. You can filter by users and approve the relevant accesses. Important aspect of certification is to ensure that you have a friendly entitlement and names and descriptions to help provide a context to your reviewers in order to rightly take the certification decisions. So then they can, further down the line, even if you go down, like you have a Azure group, right? If that Azure group is providing further accesses to your Microsoft, your groups can be mapped to permissions within Azure, right? Like a particular security group, like called role assignable permissions, right? Role assignable groups or RAGs. So your group can further have permissions to various components in your cloud provider. Like that group can have access to compute, key vault, network, storage, right? So you can also find the details of what exact fine-grained resources the particular security group has, and accordingly take the decision of your certification. So once you certify, like to all the line items you certify or approve, the approval actions will be logged in your audit logs for all the line items that you reject because that access is not relevant. The Identity Security Cloud automatically connects with your cloud provider's APIs and deprovisions the accesses that are no longer relevant. Okay, so that's on our first topic, which is Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, the integration with Identity Security Cloud, and how you can efficiently enforce governance across your same cloud infrastructures. The next topic that I would like to cover is the artificial intelligence, right? SailPoint provide your Identity Security Cloud. It's the solution is ISC, Identity Security Cloud. Inside that, you have the various catalog of services, like you have your the ISC based, your IGA services. Then you have your Cloud Infrastructure Entitlement Management, the topics that we discussed. You have artificial intelligence, right? It is also an augmented service that you can enable in your Identity Security Cloud, with which you can, artificial intelligence can augment your decisions. I'll not it can help you in taking the decisions. It will help you in ensuring a proper governance of your processes, policies, and controls, right? So what it does internally is, like, as ISC is a catalog, right? Like the main aspect that drives the artificial intelligence engine is your data, right? So Identity Security Cloud, right, is having a very rich data set across. It is connecting with all your applications, right? So in a mature IAM implementation, your Identity Security Cloud will be connected to all the known enterprise applications that are there in your ecosystem, right? So it will connect. It will periodically reconcile the data about who has access to those. What are the entitlements within the application? Which people or population have access to what resources within your entire environment, right? You will have that integration with CIEM solution, infrastructure entitlement. So you will have that knowledge base, and then you will have the feed from your identity source, which is it could be a Workday, it could be a PeopleSoft, or any Oracle HCM, the identity source that your HR is managing. So it has the rich insights about user events, right? User joiner, mover, leaver, lifecycle events. And further, it also has the policies information from business, right? But what is the ideal roles, right? What you will have your RBAC policies information. You will have your ABAC information, RBAC automated assignments by ABAC attributes information. So with all this data set, right? As you have all this information, your artificial intelligence engine is basically driving the statistics on the top of your data set to ensure that it helps you, assist you in giving you intelligent analytics, giving you recommendations, and augmenting your governance processes, right? So important aspect of intelligence is data mapping. As I told, I covered in the first topic, right? Important is the key thing that enables intelligence is building a central data repository, right? As ISC, as your ISC adoption program matures, you will connect every applications to your ISC, every cloud providers to your ISC tenant. You will map that data, right? You will map that data about who has access to what, how, and when, what are the various applications, what are the various entitlements. So we'll have the collection of all the data. You will know the information about your policies, right? And with that, you eventually will get AI services which will assist you in the recommendation. I'm just giving you a sample mapping, right? Like it's a overview, bird's eye. Right, like we need to. The first channel is getting the information from trusted source, right? Your solution will be integrated with your Workday, with your Oracle, like depending on your organization, HR management provider, right? Either it could be Workday, PeopleSoft. IdentityNow supports all the common HR management system softwares that are there, solutions that are there, right? So how you do that data mapping is you configure identity profiles. In the identity profiles, right? You configure the attribute mappings, like that identity now's display name attribute is mapping to, let's say, XYZ attribute in my Oracle HCM or my Workday or my PeopleSoft, right? Similarly, the important attributes for AI services is your job context, right? Like I would say the very key attribute, like all are important, but the primary attributes for driving your recommendations, peer access analytics is your organization context, right? So what is your job title, what is your job code, where in what department a person is working upon, right? What is the location of a person, and so on, right? Because as per the typical rule, right, as a general rule, I would say that in most of the organizations, right, people working in same department, same job code, job profile will typically have similar access set, right? Because they are working in the same job responsibilities. And in a typical employee identity management space, right? Employee governance, people working in same department, cost center, title, right? Typically tends to have a similar set of accesses, right? So that's the underlying principle that is being used by peer access analytics in your AI services, right? So important attributes to be mapped is your organization context information. Right, so you can map it by setting up identity profiles and attribute mappings. You can have a one-on-one mapping of these attributes to the corresponding attributes in your sources, or you could also apply transforms, right? Like you can define your transforms, like there are pre-built transform template for all the common string operations that are there, or also you can build your own custom transforms if really any of the out-of-the-box of transformations are not mapping your requirements, right? So the common transfers, like you can see this, right? This is inward Boolean transform, where whatever information you are getting in a Boolean attribute, it is negating it. The transform will eventually negate perform a logical nor not operation on that, right? And then there are other transforms like substring transforms, lookup transforms. The other we'll get more in deep dive when we actually have this hands-on training. And important is like as for now, there are no limits on the additional identity attributes that you can have in your identity profile. So that's you can have your identity schema as flexible as your organization requirements. Okay. So moving ahead, I'll just like this is more details when we do this, but at a high level, we need to ensure that all our data attributes are mapped. All the we map the identity attributes, we map the account attributes, we map the entitlement attributes, and then we configure those aggregations in order to ensure that we have the unified repository of all the data that is there across the enterprise applications. So main important aspect is like, the AI services data store, right? We need to ensure that we have built this master data source or main data source, which is having the information about all the applications that are there in that moment, with all the entitlements that can be requested or that can be managed. And also the information about all the accounts, user account mappings, the identity lifecycle information, right? So this rich data store is the main key for your AI services, right? So typically AI services deliver you more kind of capabilities or benefits when you mature or ISC adoption program. Like the more data you have, the more intelligent the recommendations will be, the more intelligence your AI actions would be. So eventually your AI services essentially maps to your IdentityNow ISC data store to build intelligence recommendations, peer access analytics, and give you those and augmented governance in your policies, processes, and controls, right? So that's later, eventually this with right. Eventually, you can have predictive identity, right, wherein you can upfront deliver the recommendations in your platform. Just give me one moment, I'll be back. That's on AI services, right? Like the main is the data store, and where it is used, like AI services can augment your access insights, right? It can help you with your augmented process experience, right? It can give in your data explorer, you can get peer access analytics, peer, like people working in sales department generally have access to sales resources 1, 2, and 3. But I found a user which is having additional access, so that's the outlier, right? So it can give you a outlier analytics. It can give you recommendations like this is the access like that could be added to a user based on the analytics data that I have, right? It can help you provide, it typically scans your access history, gives you access insights. It can help you with access modeling, right? It can help you with your role discovery. It can help you with your access modeling. Like you can model, it can give you like, based on the data pattern, I found that users in sales product development department generally have access to applications 1, 2, and 3. So do you want to prepare a role, create a rollout of it? So that's where access modeling AI services augments. And then you can have intelligent recommendations, right? During the certifications, it can provide intelligent confidence scores based on the peer access analytics and the data set that is there. That it will augment approvers in taking approver decision with a confidence score that will help in taking whether the access is safe to approve or it's a risky combination. And similarly, in access request, it can drive the recommendations. I give a very short visualization, right? Like, it can help you with this dashboards where provide you the information about, help you build this dashboards where you can have a complete insight about who has access to what, how, and when. You can, monitor your JML events, more to be discussed when we deep dive. But access modeling, role discovery, it will help you with your role discovery, where it can say that based on this we found that this is the potential role that you can create. It can give you access review recommendations with a confidence score, whether you can that will help you approve and reject your entitlements. Just give me one more. Yeah, so that is all the use cases of your AI services. Moving into the next topic, which is workflow. Workflow is a powerful orchestration engine, right? So typically, your identity governance and administration, your IAM, right? We have multiple processes that needs to be orchestrated in a particular way, right? Like the typical scenarios of joiner, mover, lever, right? Like as and when the employee is onboarded to your organization, you need to ensure that employee gets the relevant set of accesses, right? So you need to drive your automated provisioning policies from it. Or there could be events of movers, right? When a user is moving from one organization to another, you need to trigger a business process, a security process that can help you, revoke the permissions, employee permissions as per the older organization, and add the permissions that are relevant to the new job responsibilities, right? And similarly, you might need to drive your lever automations, where you need to ensure that all the employee accesses are revoked based on your termination policies, right? So that terminated employees can no longer access your ecosystem resources. Or you could have your custom, orchestrations or business requirements around, sending an event to like, let's say if the connectivity is failure, sending a notification to your ITSM solution to ensure that your support team can take action if there is any anomaly, right? So all of these business process orchestrations, SailPoint has a powerful tool called Workflow Engine, which enables you to orchestrate your processes. Typically there will be a trigger point. Trigger point could be either a user change event or an event like sources failing, or an event like someone has requested something, right? So there are predefined event or trigger points, and based on those triggers, you can define the series of activities, sequence of activities that needs to be happen in a particular order, or it enables you to define your orchestration to eventually accomplish your business goals or security goals. Important components we consider about workflow are triggers, which are the events like your LCM lifecycle events or your source update events or your administration events or failure events, right? With those, you can trigger your workflows. Then you have actions. With actions, you can define what you need to perform. You can also have these actions and trigger based on the business process sequence that you want. Actions would be typically actions like provision task or deprovision task, or notify via email, or create a ITSM ticket, and so on. And then there are operators. Operators are kind of operators like your decision operators, if else statements, for loops, with which you can take decisional actions based on your business process requirements. There is some examples high level, like what you can do is manage identity lifecycle. So with workflows, you can manage your identity lifecycle to automate your, as I discussed, right, onboarding of joiner, mover, leaver scenarios. You can automate it. You can provision or deprovision accesses along the way based on your lifecycle events. You can streamline the processes with automated notifications, as we discussed earlier again, like source fail, like connectivity is failure, then you can automate notification, automate creation of IT tickets. Or if you have disconnected applications, right, you can create periodic reminder notifications, failure notification, alerting. So all of these is something that you can leverage from your SailPoint workflow engine. There is a common use case that is shared here, like a typical mover scenario. So where we are saying is, if attribute the source of this would be a user change event, LCM event, and what we are saying is, if there is a person's department job code or XYZ is updated, right? So get the identity, get the accesses, and manage access action. Like this typical use cases, get all the accesses, send an email, and create a certification campaign. So it is creating a micro certification, event-driven micro campaign for the new line manager to manually to review the accesses, if to ensure that a user only has the accesses that are necessary for his or her new job responsibilities. Then there is a common case of leaver, like again, trigger is identity attributes change. And what we want to do is either send mail or deprovision accesses and so on, like manage accounts with where the action would be to disable it. Yeah. So that's all I have on the topics that we discussed today, like around cloud infrastructure entitlement management, AI services, workflow management, what is cloud. So that's it I have for today's session. I'll open it for queries, Q&As.
Hi, can I ask a question, or if you can hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yes.
Super. In terms of this IDN thing, how would we learn? I see, videos people are pushing. We'll be able to perform real-time training as well, real-time lessons as well.
Yeah. So Gary can provide more, like you can reach out to our Gary for more details, but all our trainings, right, are hands-on, real project-based trainings, right? Like what we do is in our training, right, if you consider, like we will first give a deep dive walkthrough of architecture, right? Like the product architecture, what are the various components, what are the processes, policies, and controls. Kind of the sessions will be, deep dive into architecture, how you can ensure a highly available disaster resilient deployment of your IDN with a VAs, with your virtual appliance, how you can deploy and manage your virtual appliance. And then how you can manage, at a high level, theoretical sessions will include like how you can onboard various connectors, what are various protocols, right? What is REST web service, what is SOAP web service, what are the common database protocols, etc. And then it would be a actual hands-on session where we will demonstrate, onboarding identity source, like let's say onboarding a HR system, then setting up a virtual appliance. It all would be hands-on, right? Onboarding applications, how you can onboard
So it's all practical,
application.
because that's the biggest struggle with IDN, because a lot of providers are saying, okay, we can train you and give you video, but actually they don't have the
No, no,
subscription with
we
the
do.
SailPoint guys.
No, we have
Okay.
a partner subscription with which we deliver trainings, and for virtual appliance, typically we demonstrate the setup in the trainer environment, but rest each of you will have your ISC credentials and our partner tenant during the course of
Okay.
training where we can do the hands-on exercise.
Super. Another thing is how much one has to be like technical, because I'm not a technical, thinking about myself. I'm not a technical person at all. So not at all. I'm like 20% technical and 80% I'm more of a functional person. So do we need to be super technical to be on this training
No,
and
no, no.
work towards certification?
Yeah. So like as you see this trend, right? As a service offerings, right? Like identity security cloud is a service offering, right? IGA,
Yeah.
delivering IG as a service, right? So all of these offerings are primarily targeted, trying to ease out things, right? You don't
Yeah.
need to worry about, the server administration, how this services are deployed in backend, how they are managing the uptime, how they are managing the containers availability. All of that is not required, right? It's the important is the functional knowledge, right? The key
Mhm.
aspect here is the domain knowledge around identity access
Yeah.
management, and that too we will cover during the training, right? So the training would be like, the first day of the training would be around foundations, right? Where we explain about the domain, cybersecurity domain, the identity and access management, what we do here,
Mhm.
how we do here. And the next second day typically would be architecture, deep dive into like what are the high level components, like in identity security cloud, to integrate it with your customer environment, right? The only thing needed is a VA, virtual appliance. So it's a very easy setup. We explain how you can achieve highly available deployment in your VA clusters, and a small explanation about how you can manage VS, but again, it would be completely guided. And then the app onboardings, again, it is like, wizard based onboardings where throughout the training, we'll explain the concepts,
Okay.
foundations, and
Mhm.
yeah.
Sorry, and the final, I don't want to hijack anyone else's time. If someone else want to ask questions, feel free. I'll be quiet then. The last one is, will that work towards some kind of certification in the SailPoint world, or is it more of a, because that's
Yeah,
an
you
eventually thing? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so with the after the completion of training, right? Depending on the like we deliver two trainings here, like I guess the foundations and foundations plus advanced. Gary can provide you more information there, but each training is targeted to like with the end of this, like advanced training for sure, you can complete your ID and ISC. I guess there is engineer and professional, so you can complete both the certifications going through
Okay.
ISC advanced training with us.
Okay, nice. Thank you.
Yeah, anyone else have any queries? Feel free to unmute or drop a message over chat. Question also.
Guys, do we have any question for Jaideep? Jaideep, I think, go ahead, please.
I guess we are good. Everyone is good.
Jaideep, so I think that we are through with the questionnaires as well. And plus we don't have any further questions for the chat. So first of all, I would like to thanks for, from the Orbus side for taking this time and, taking us through this insight great webinar on the SailPoint IDN, navigating the identity. And I would like to thank all the audience who have been, going through this webinar. Just to let you know, guys, this will be, recorded session would be hosted on our YouTube channel. So we would request everyone to go ahead, like, subscribe, and, and we would be also sending out the information on our WhatsApp community for this session. So just stay tuned. Just go ahead and, follow our page also on Orbus International, which will be soon coming up with the information around, this hosting of this session. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Jaideep. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.